See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for bringing us all here today, and thank you that you are here with us. I pray that you will give us a word from you and that you will use me to bring that word today. In your name, amen. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here. It's good to be up here. Amen. Oh, yes. Amen. Some people are like, why are they clapping already? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andrea Francis. I'm a long-time member of Advent Hope since 2007. I'm originally from Cape Town, South Africa, and in 2007, my husband Dwight and I came to a cafe night at Advent Hope, and we've been here since. Advent Hope has been a place where we could volunteer, where we're raising our family, and in 2007, it gave me a safe place to land with all my doubts, a place to serve God and my community of faith, and through Pastor Todd's leadership, a path back to gospel-centered relationship. So that's a bit about me and my lens through which I'm speaking today. If you've been coming to Advent Hope over the past 6 or 7 months, you may know that I was diagnosed with classic Hodgkin's lymphoma, or CHL, a blood cancer, in November 2024 at the age of 44. If you didn't know this, sorry for the spoiler, but don't worry, this talk won't be a total downer, and I'll limit any unintentional suspense by saying up front that by God's grace and the wonders of modern medicine, I've been in full remission since June 5th, 2025. Yes. Thank you, and thank God for that. I'm speaking here today to share my story of healing and also as a thanks offering for all the support given to me and my family during the past 7 months. Last November, I went from my regular annual physical where I was complaining of fatigue to a diagnosis of CHL in the space of 2 weeks. While it was all a whirlwind, in reading others' diagnosis experiences, I realized how blessed I was to get answers so quickly. And for that, I will always be grateful. A side note to everyone, go for your annual checkup. And to my ladies, especially ladies around about my age, don't just dismiss new symptoms as perimenopause or general fatigue. My oncologist said that I'd probably been fighting cancer for at least a year. And there I was thinking I was just tired. We often say with cancer, there's a before and an after. While that may be true, I'd like to get slightly more granular. In my experience, there has been a before diagnosis, life as I knew it, the time during treatment, and the aftermath of treatment, life in a new context. It's possible to think that once you've rung the bell and you're in remission, that's it. You've made it. But that's not true. I'm in the aftermath of treatment now, and candidly, I'm still figuring out many things about this new body that I inhabit. CHL has no known cause. In the simplest explanation, it's the result of a white blood cell gone rogue. So as the science stands now, it's not genetic or environmental, just tough luck. I would have struggled with this diagnosis even more than I did had I not been fortunate almost 15 years ago to read a Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Emperor of All Maladies, a biography of cancer. I don't know if anybody else has read that book. Yeah, okay, I've got one. Thanks, Lincoln. By Siddhartha Mukherjee. While the book was jam-packed with information, well-researched, right, and incredibly interesting, I walked away from it having realized that sometimes cancer can be random, something I had not contemplated before. And that, as we say in our house, the answer to why me is often just, why not me? Who would have thought that almost 15 years later, this knowledge from the book would free me up to focus on a cure, on clarity, and on mindset, as opposed to berating myself about the cause. Unlike many people in this country, I am blessed with excellent health care and a job that I could continue doing remotely during treatment, so I acknowledge that as I'm speaking, I'm doing it from a position of privilege. That privilege afforded me the capacity for reflection while I was healing. So just to level set, cancer sucks. It's the worst, right? It's the worst. And everything doesn't happen for a reason. Hot tip for all of us, don't say everything happens for a reason when someone's in the pit. I've reconciled myself to the fact that we are broken people in broken bodies in a broken world. And that means that things we don't like can and will happen. So this talk is not an attempt to put a shiny veneer on what was a harrowing experience for me and for those around me, but rather to share some of my thoughts on healing with you, to perhaps show how we can exist within the contradictions, how we can be scared and strong, that we can navigate the tension that exists between the horror of a diagnosis and the hope for a cure, that we can be thankful for the treatment and reeling from its effects on our bodies. This is not about trying so hard for me to make meaning that the experience itself is diminished. As humans, we can be very good at that, trying to find meaning in everything. Rather, I'm sharing the clarity that surfaced from abiding in the thing, from sitting in the suck, if you will. Cancer diagnoses and treatments are generally referred to as a fight, right? Or a battle. What's ironic is that the 6 months I spent in treatment were probably some of the most peaceful that I've ever had. Yes, my body was doing a lot of work to heal, but my mind was incredibly calm. I had read Dr. Ellen Langer. Anybody read Dr. Ellen Langer? No. Okay, I'm on my own. That's okay. I highly recommend her work. She's a professor out of Harvard. She wrote, or one of her more recent books is Mind-Body Unity. I read it soon after my diagnosis and understood the power that a calm mind has over healing my body. But the calm came from more than just reading a book, of course. The day after my diagnosis, I had what can only be described as a divine intervention. I've relayed this to some of you in the audience, and so I apologize for repetition. When I came back from Sloan Kettering on the train, I had two very mundane kind of day-to-day incidents that happened. One was on the same subway. This is typical New York, right? One rider cursed at another rider for not moving his feet when she was trying to get by him. Sounds familiar? Yeah, okay. And the second incident was in a pharmacy, CVS, where a man cut right in front of me in line. I mean, we both knew he did it. And then he was kind of saying, well, he was there all along. Also sounds familiar. So 2 simple incidents which I might normally have ruminated on, maybe even have tried to rectify, especially in the case of Mr. CVS. But instead of dwelling, I was filled with an overwhelming conviction that I had to let it go. I had to let go of the negativity that was around me. In fact, I felt like it was bringing a shadow into me. Sounds simple, but highly profound for me in that moment, because I felt like I would have pursued the line cutter at a minimum, right? That divine intervention in the middle of an interminable CVS pharmacy line, again, I'm sure you can relate, was a call to be at peace. It created the conviction that peace was a priority for body and mind. It was so clear to me, and I was so grateful for it. When I relayed the experience of extreme clarity to a friend a few weeks later, she said, "Oh, the portal." She had had a similar experience during a recent cancer scare and actually shared how she missed the portal. The portal. Apologies to anyone squirming in your seat right now, hearing about a portal. I promise that I am not selling access to the portal for a small fee, or even a large fee. So just stick with me. I've benefited from the divine clarity and focus of the portal throughout my diagnosis and treatment, and it has allowed me to grapple with and distill some thoughts during that time. I share them as a testimony with you in the hope of resonance. Now, cancer takes a lot from you. From the top of your head, yes, my oncologist does my hair, to the soul. My jokes are falling flat today, right? You can laugh, it's okay. I know it's cancer, but you can laugh. It's okay, I give you permission to laugh. So it takes, right, from the top of my hair, I'll try again. My oncologist does my hair. All right, to the soles of your feet, on the outside as well as the inside. It takes, and it's relentless. But in the midst of all this taking, the concept of being granted permission kept popping up for me. So I went with it and explored the permissions that surfaced. I have 3 of them for us today. 1, permission to rest. 2, permission to receive. And 3, permission to be redeemed. While I'll speak about these 3 separately, they were really surfacing in parallel, which is important to remember. Permission to rest. Being diagnosed with cancer forced me to stop, right? To rest. Before that, I was pretty much programmed to push through. Even the symptoms that I had, which turned out to be cancer, I largely attributed to working full-time while raising 2 kids, being close to perimenopause, and being engaged in volunteering and personal endeavors. But as I was doing all the resting, I kept wondering why I didn't rest more in the before times. Why everyone doesn't rest more. But I also felt guilty for resting, while so many worked on my behalf. So since I could not ignore the guilt and just get up and do stuff, I was forced to sit with the guilt and evaluate it from various angles. It helped that I had stumbled upon Tricia Hersey, she of the NAP ministry. Yes, okay. And a book titled Rest is Resistance, earlier in the year. She speaks about rest this way. Our worth does not reside in how much we produce, especially not for a system that exploits and dehumanizes us. This oppressive culture wants us to believe in a scarcity model. Resting resides in a model of abundance. Rest in its simplest form becomes an act of resistance and a reclaiming of power because it asserts our basic humanity. We are enough. I realized in reading her work, and there are many more impactful points she makes, I highly recommend her work, that I had also signed on to what some call internalized capitalism, believing that productivity equals worth. That along with so many others, I was in the grind. I saw rest as a reward for hard work, not as a basic human right. I was faced with my own mortality and still feeling bad about laying down. That's how deep my programming was set. The stakes were as high as they could ever get, and still I wasn't willing to embrace the rest that my body needed when my head was telling me that there was work to be done. I had the knowledge, but I couldn't integrate it. So what changed? What did permission to rest look like for me? The epiphany happened fairly quickly when I observed myself running to and fro, dealing with gifts and cleanup after a birthday party about 2 months into treatment. And for a brief moment, I saw the frenzy for what it was, a lack of grace for myself. A lack of grace for myself. I couldn't rest because I didn't have grace or compassion for my tiredness. I was wholly steeped in productivity, in the belief that my value resided in my utility and that resting diminished my value. I needed everything resolved and all the bows neatly tied before I could rest. But rest isn't what you do when the work is done. It's answering the call to have grace for your humanity. So permission to rest looked like grace. Percy speaks to me again when she says, release the shame you feel when resting. It does not belong to you. Treating each other and ourselves with care isn't a luxury, but an absolute necessity if we're going to thrive. Resting isn't an afterthought, but a basic part of being human. And what is also true for me, and I'm sure for many of us, is that giving myself the grace to rest opened up capacity to feel a diverse range of emotions. Grace for ourselves can engender grace for others. In my rest, I found that my relationship with God became more visceral and less cerebral. My body was more open to divine mystery. And in that, I was reminded that Jesus himself calls us to rest. He says it so clearly in Matthew, I will give you rest. That word give brings me to the second permission that surfaced for me, permission to receive. When I was first diagnosed and told that I would have to be in chemo and immunotherapy for 6 months, and I would be severely immunocompromised and not have any energy, I was pretty much floored. Dwight and I had managed as best as we could, working, raising 2 kids who were going to 2 different schools. Some of the parents know what that looks like for pickups, and managing a household. This diagnosis was going to take me out of the frame, and for basically all of it. I knew that we would need help, but I didn't want to ask for help. Right? It's hard to ask for help. If this cancer had come along a few years ago, before I had been in therapy, or many years earlier, before our own Nick Zork who isn't here today, but I'm giving him a shout out nonetheless, Nick Zork planted a seed when he said in one of his sermons, and I'm paraphrasing, having the humility to receive help allows the helper the joy of giving it. I would have tried to go it alone. But Nick's words and my work on boundaries, amongst other things, helped me to realize that finding my voice and asking for help does not automatically translate into me being a burden. I was forced to consider whether the self-sufficiency that I wielded so often was possibly just pride. Whether the self-sufficiency was possibly just pride, and that I had to let it go. So when the time came to ask for help, it turned out that I had been primed to do so. I had an internal framework for receiving help, and as soon as my heart was ready, my tribe stood up. Many of you in this room are part of that tribe. I'm African, I'm going to call you a tribe. My people. So many people made offers of help, and so the question then just became how to implement it. Now, here you have to forgive the fact that I'm an accountant and that the thing that grounded me was, as it usually is, a spreadsheet. Yeah. And even within that, I asked a colleague to set up the spreadsheet for me. And so, you see, I was beginning to be comfortable with receiving help. This somewhat famous spreadsheet allowed us to see how much help we actually needed, and it became quite clear to me that self-reliance was not going to work, and I could let it go through the practicality of that neutral document. This exercise also showed me that often help doesn't come from the places that we may expect, right? So instead of trying to control what the solution will look like, we need to be open to what is possible, even if we don't actually know what's possible. But because progress is not linear and my programming runs deep, there were still many times during treatment when I received help and I struggled with it. But God is patient with me. And Ephesians 2:10 kept popping up. It reads, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which were prepared in advance for us to do." So what reflecting on this verse eventually helped me to understand was that God has already prepared work for all of us that we will do, not to earn our salvation, because we can't, but in response to his transformative power in our lives. My reflection helped me realize that my inability, listen carefully, my inability to put self-reliance, pride, and guilt aside and humble myself to receive help meant that I was likely an impediment to the good works that God had already prepared for my tribe to do on my behalf. There are people here today, listening online or listening later, who have helped tremendously in so many ways, and for that I say thank you. Thank you. And if some of you will allow me to step out in courage, I will share that many have said that they were filled up by giving that help. And that's not me, that's God. God knows that we need each other, and the work he prepared for them had the blessing built in. So permission to receive looked like letting go of extreme self-reliance and grabbing onto community and reciprocity. Then being able to be thoughtful about creating sustainable ways for both me and my community in which that help could be received. So far we've had permission to rest, good. Permission to receive. Now we come to the third one, permission to be redeemed. The last of the permissions that surfaced was this notion of being redeemed. Now, there are countless passages in the Bible that refer to our redemption through Jesus Christ, and I'll read two here. Ephesians 1, verse 7. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins, in accordance with the riches of God's grace. And then Psalm 107, 1 through 2. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story, those who redeemed from the hand of the foe. So what surfaced for me was not necessarily questions around my redemption through Christ. I've accepted that wholeheartedly. But more so, how it was that within that redemption, I still carried so much. I could feel the need to be redeemed, to be freed from the things that I carried, from their weight. And I'd hazard to say that many of us likely need to be freed from the things that we carry. The identities that we hold on to, whether they serve us or not. The beliefs that we are entrenched in, whether they serve us or not. Our unreliable narrators and their endless litany of critiques. The need for freedom came up for me as I continued to grapple with why it was so hard to rest and why it was so hard to receive. Why was it so hard to be still and to reflect? And the constant refrain was, it's selfish. It's selfish. It's selfish to rest, and it's selfish to receive, especially receiving without giving the same or similar in return. My programming had resulted in me having the limiting belief that to rest while everyone was helping me during treatment must be selfish, that to receive help while not being able to return it must also be selfish. And so I dug in deeper to understand what the root cause of this thinking may be. To my joyful amazement, while watching the second episode of Abbott Elementary, any Abbott Elementary fans? All right. I was confronted with a counter-narrative to my selfish beliefs. If you're not familiar with the show Abbott Elementary, it's about the experiences of staff and students at a school in an underfunded neighborhood in Philadelphia. In the episode, Janine, a newly qualified second-grade teacher, is doing all the things in the building to try to make the environment better for the kids, up to and including electrical work. Electrical work, which results in the power and therefore the air conditioning going off on a very hot day and Janine passing out. All the kids and teachers end up outside with the kids running through the sprinklers to cool off. So basically, all Janine's plans and all the things that she wanted to do ended up in a power failure and everyone having to leave the building. When Janine comes out looking forlorn and sits next to Melissa Scamenti, a veteran teacher, they have a conversation that goes something like this. Janine, so that's it, huh? I gave it my all, passed out, and ruined the school day? Melissa, oh, you tanked. You tanked, Janine. You took the whole school down with you. It was impressive. Janine, look, I know I should have stopped. I'm sorry. I just felt so bad when I saw that look on Melina's face this morning. Melissa, you don't think it kills us to see those faces in the morning? What? Are we made of stone? You're not the first person to feel things, kid. We care. Janine, How do you and Barbara is another veteran teacher, she's asking Melissa, how do you and Barbara stop yourselves from caring too much, if that's a thing? Melissa, because it's the opposite. We care so much, we refuse to burn out. Because it's the opposite. We care so much, we refuse to burn out. If we burn out, who's here for these kids? That's why you got to take care of yourself. For as long as I could recall, I seem to have confused selfishness and self-respect, selfishness and self-compassion. I thought that to choose myself ahead of someone else at any point meant that I was selfish, that I was not worthy of being chosen first, if at all. But the wisdom of Melissa Scamenti found its mark in me that day and caused a lot of other thoughts to come together. I realized that when I choose myself, it isn't selfish, it's compassion, it's respect, it's love even. What Melissa didn't say, but what was implied, is that I am worthy of being chosen. I'm worthy of being chosen. To be fair, my therapist had prompted similar thinking about a year before, but I guess it took 2 minutes on a 28-minute mockumentary on network television to drive the point home. I'm worthy of choosing myself to rest and to receive, to live more freely. That validation of worth has to reside inside of me, not in the external affirmations and accolades, as tempting as they may be. Janine thought that fixing the electricity would be the trick to show that she was a great teacher and that she cared, but she ended up almost falling off a ladder in the dark. When life quiets us and isolates us, when our bodies, our careers, or our relationships break down and the hustle comes to a halt, the external affirmations in the classic sense often fall away, and we cannot leverage them as readily to show as markers of our worth. It's even more important at those times to pull a Scamenti and remind ourselves that we are worthy of being taken care of. To care for ourselves because we care about our families and friends. And choosing ourselves is choosing them. This knowledge redeems me from my internal narrator who tells me that I'm being selfish to care for myself, when in fact, I'm engaging in an act of radical self-respect, self-compassion, courage, and self-love. So those are the 3 permissions. Permission to rest, grace. Permission to receive, compassion. And permission to be redeemed. So we can end there, but like a typical educator, I'm going to sneak in an extra credit for you. Stay with me? Yeah? Okay. It's about hope in the aftermath. I said a lot of good things that I learned, but this is still life, right? So where's the hope in the aftermath? If you know me well, and many of you do, some of you know me so well, like Beth, I'll give you a shout out, who's wearing a cricket shirt. I generally like to watch sport, and I particularly love cricket. Any other, I don't even want to ask, any other cricket fans? All right, I've got my people. I didn't expect that, thank you. I'm glad there's some other cricket fans here. While cricket is not followed much in the US, with about 2.5 billion fans, it's the second most popular sport in the world behind soccer. I won't try to explain cricket now, as we will be here all day with most people's heads spinning, all right? So we can talk about that after the service. I followed cricket since the age of 12, when in 1992, South Africa was allowed to return to the international scene. and play in the World Cup following years of isolation because of apartheid. That year, the Proteas, which is the nickname for the South African cricket team, Proteas also the national flower, surprised everyone by making it to the semi-final, where they were in a winning position at the World Cup, needing 22 runs off 13 balls. Totally doable, right? And then it rained. They don't play through the rain in cricket, so the game stopped, and by the time they came back, they needed 22 runs off one ball. Possible? No, impossible. Heartbreak for all of us, right? We thought they were going to maybe even win the whole thing, and they lost. 7 years later, in 1999, in a match that many fans will never get over, the Proteas were in a semi-final again. But this time they lost again. They lost to Australia by 1 run. That means they almost did it, 1 run. Some of our Knicks and Mets fans can probably relate to these heartbreaks. Almost there, but not quite. And so the struggles continued. Every time the Proteas got to a semi-final in a World Cup, fans like me sat, biting our nails, wishing that perhaps this time things would be different, but they faltered. 32 years, did you hear me? 32 years passed and nothing changed. South Africa would win every match that didn't matter but could never get to a final. Those folks who follow cricket, you know what I'm talking about. You can corroborate. There were many World Cup matches where I promised myself that this time I would not watch because of my nerves. You could still find me in front of the TV. Because hope is a tricky thing. Once it's embedded in you, it's almost impossible to uproot. So I hoped and I watched with bated breath. In 2019, I was able to attend the World Cup in England, and I thought surely this time with me, somehow my presence, right, would make a difference. With me being there, they would win. Well, my hope was shattered up close, in person. In 2023, they lost in a semi-final again against Australia again. By this point, they had played and lost 12 semi-final matches across formats, a record. Despite all this heartbreak, I've worn a cricket jersey to almost every chemo infusion at Sloan Kettering. Many of you know because I used to send you pictures. I wore a cricket jersey to almost every chemo infusion at Sloan Kettering. It was often a conversation topic with my oncology team or other patients. I wore those shirts to remember South Africa, where I'm from, the strength that resides in my roots and in my bones, but also as an act of hope. A belief that we persist even if life tells us that defeat is a likely outcome. In 2024, we're getting closer now, right? 2024, when the T20 World Cup was held in the US and the Caribbean, I was able to attend 2 matches in New York. It was a dream come true for me. Cricket had finally arrived in America. So maybe this time, right, they would win. In that tournament, South Africa won all their matches, and they won a semi-final for the first time. The curse had been broken, right? I was watching on the couch at home screaming and crying, and Dwight came in to check up on me to see if I was okay. It had been 32 years of waiting, and they had finally won a semi-final. I dared to hope that they might go all the way this time. What do you think happened? Anybody want to hazard a guess? They lost the final by a very small margin, but those are the ones that hurt, right? They lost. We were devastated yet again and wondered if the team was just destined to wander in the wilderness of defeat forever, their fans with them. The aftermath of cancer is a bit like that wilderness. It doesn't have the controlled cadence of treatment. It's steeped in silent questions, wondering if the current ache or pain is temporary or permanent, if the fatigue will advance or recede, if the cancer is gone for good. It's like trying to see the sun through a foggy haze, a star in the city sky, trying to find hope while stumbling in the dark. On the morning of June 11th, 2025, just under a week after I had received the news that I was in full remission, the South African cricket team, the Proteas, set out to play the World Test Championship final against none other than our arch rivals, Australia. They were playing at Lord's, the home of cricket, on an uncharacteristically sunny day in London to a packed stadium. It was unexpected that the Proteas would even make the final, and candidly, I was happy for them, but also a little bit aggravated that I would have to process yet another loss. They would play a 5-day test match against what was certainly a superior Australian side, and they were absolute underdogs. Each day, I tuned in like this to check the scores or watch in real time or watch the highlights, but my stomach roiled just thinking about what might happen. Sometimes hope feels like a tummy ache. I won't take you through a play-by-play, but on the afternoon of June 14th, 2025, the unexpected happened. They did it. They won the final. Exactly. Yeah! 33 years. They did it against Australia, a team that had haunted all of us since 1999. They did it in the most respected format of the game, and they did it after 33 years in the wilderness. The same player who had captained the loss in 2024, Aiden Markram, made 0 in his first innings and then went on to make 136 runs to get the Proteas over the line to victory. Yes, I cried. I think the whole country was emotional as I sat and cried in front of my laptop. The players were ecstatic. And these were Markram's words after the win. He says, "I thought a lot about the 2024 World Cup, the one that they had lost, and how helpless I felt sitting on the side after getting out. But this time, I didn't want to sit there again, helpless. So that motivated me to stay at the crease in the final." What Markram was saying was that he wanted to stay in the game. My emotional healing is taking place side by side with the physical healing from cancer. These changes are not a one-shot deal. I grapple with them daily. Some days are better than others, and it's a long road. But in life, as in cricket, no matter how much we're stumbling in the dark, stay in the game. You don't know what a win might look like.